Taxi violence has reached crisis levels in South Africa. The committee was reacting to the latest incident in which 12 people linked to a Gauteng-based taxi association were gunned down while travelling in a minibus taxi between the towns of Colenso and Weenen on Saturday in KZN. Well, this is a cause for concern as taxi violence continues to escalate around the country. For more on this, we are joined on the line by Siyabulela Fobosi, a Ph.D. student whose research focus is on the taxi industry in South Africa. A very good evening to you. We thank you very much for your time. Well, Santaco's chief strategist, Bafana Magagula, said that taxi violence indicates a lack of efficiency within the Department of Transport. Magagula's argument is also, of course, supported by stats compiled by the South African Police Service back in the 2016-17 annual report. In terms of some of the research that you have done, what have you found to be the cause?
My understanding, really, the way I see it, one of the causes of this problem is because of the route allocations, in the industry, that seems to be overlapping. For example, there are a number of taxi operators in one route, just going to Alexandra, for example, and some of the operators operating illegally. They don't have operating licenses. And so I think these should be taken off the road. So really some of the problems, have to do with the fact that there's route overlapping, which is causing conflict between operators. And the Santaco and other unions are very, complaining that there seems to be lack of consultation between Santaco and government, on how the issues within the transport sector would be resolved, on how the taxi industry could take part in the public transport sector.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of those issues of route disputes that we have been seeing and the facilitation of talks that simply does not seem to be happening. And if they do, it does not seem to be coming to some sort of resolution. Let's also talk about how this is also being supported by some of the internal power struggles within the relevant taxi associations.
Within the industry themselves, there are really some of the problems that are happening, with some, operators that are coming in, and wanting to take charge, of that particular route, and yet there's already an operator that is, operating there, there are really some power struggles within the industry itself. And really, I think one of the important things to address this is really for the taxi operators, Santaco as well, to be very much involved in order to enforce, the issues of greater, customer care, and working together within the industry, and the Department of Transport as well can be very much involved in that regard in order to enforce, what I would call taxi cooperatives, within the industry, which will be very much, play a role, to help, the industry to strengthen its position in the country.
Let's just talk about how it has now been described as having reached a crisis level at the expense of innocent commuters, at the expense of innocent bystanders, at the fear of communities. Just this incident that took place in KZN alone, speaking to one of our reporters on the ground, him quoting some of the residents in the area, describing it as an absolute war zone and for them fearing for their safety in and around the area. Let's talk about the dynamics of how socially South Africans are affected by this, but at the same time, it seems somewhat of a norm to commuters that this is what happens on the roads.
This is really a problem, for me, the taxi violence, especially considering the fact that, the South African minibus taxi industry remains the critical pillar of the country's public transport. And it is not only, the most available mode of transport, it is the mostly used, by the public. And therefore, the violence affects most of the passengers who are using this, public transport, and I would suggest that it is important, that the operators in the industry, seriously, consider, the role that taxis play in the broader economy. So, by this I mean that they should reduce cases of violence, be it power struggles within the industry, cases of violence where, passengers are killed, the same passengers that they are directly linked to in order to generate income. So in order to generate income for a taxi owner, he or she needs to really take care, of that, passenger, consider, the relation between him or her and the passenger, and by doing so, in order to do that, I think the Department of Transport can also play a role in making sure that customer service skills are trained, the taxi drivers are trained in customer care, of the passengers.
Indeed. Thank you very much for joining us this evening in conversation there with Siyabulela Fobosi, a Ph.D. student, of course, giving us more details around the recent taxi violence that has taken place. Specifically in this incident, over 200 bullets were shot at that taxi.
Yeah, of course, it's something that continues to happen right across the country for quite some time as well. That KZN area itself is, of course, a peak area. But moving on to something else as well, new technology.